I was standing in the courthouse hallway when I heard it. My brother's voice, low but smug, carrying through the thin door of conference room B. "Don't worry," he told my father's lawyer. "My sister won't fight it. She thinks the money is just temporarily misplaced. She still believes in family." I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't the words. It was the tone. That sharp, casual entitlement that had marked our family dynamic for decades, but never aimed at me so openly. The lawyer asked, "And the 48,000? You're certain she won't ask for documentation?" My brother gave a small laugh. "That money is already gone. Used exactly where Dad needed it. She'll understand. She always does. Understand. As if I hadn't spent years scraping that money together. As if I hadn't trusted them with it." A coldness spread through me, not anger yet, just clarity, steady and surgical. I stepped away from the door before they realized I was there. In that moment, everything in my life bifurcated into before and after. Before, I believed that family, flawed, messy, frustrating, still held a kind of moral gravity. After, I realized that gravity only pulls in one direction if you let it. The hallway smelled of coffee and disinfectant, a faint fluorescent hum buzzing overhead. People moved around me, unaware that a quiet fracture had just formed under my feet. My phone vibrated. A text from my brother. "Hey sis. Come in when ready. We can talk like adults." I almost laughed. He had no idea what he had set in motion. Because I wasn't going to walk into that room. I wasn't going to negotiate. And I definitely wasn't going to understand. No. I was going to document. I was going to investigate. And when the truth surfaced, clean, undeniable, cold as steel, none of them would be able to bury it ever again. My father once told me, "Family first." But I was about to learn what he'd really meant. Family helps themselves first. And they had finally underestimated the wrong daughter. I walked out of the courthouse, not realizing that within 48 hours, the first piece of evidence would fall straight into my lap. My name is Marianne Elwood, and I am 64 years old. If you met me on the street, you'd likely assume I was someone's retired teacher or maybe a librarian enjoying her quiet years. Silver white hair in a neat twist, soft-spoken voice. The kind of woman who sends thank you notes and still reads the local paper front to back. And you'd be right. For the most part. But what people rarely see, what my family definitely never saw, is that quiet doesn't mean blind. Soft doesn't mean weak. And loyalty, when abused long enough, becomes a blade that turns in the abuser's hands. I spent 37 years as a school administrator. That job teaches you two important skills: how to document and how to detect lies even children can't articulate yet. After retiring at 62, I thought life would settle into something gentle. Gardening. Walks with my dog. Helping my grandchildren with school projects. Small, slow joys. But then came my father's health crisis. Minor at first, fainting spells and confusion. Then a car accident. Then, the revelation that he had been quietly mishandling money and signing documents he didn't understand. My brother, Daniel, stepped in as the self-appointed coordinator. He was 59 at the time, a man who'd spent his life floating between jobs and opportunities, always landing softly because someone, my mother, then my father, then at times me, cushioned the fall. When he asked me to, temporarily, send $48,000 so Dad could settle some urgent property taxes and medical invoices, I didn't hesitate. Dad had always helped me. This was simply the cycle turning. What I didn't know then, and what I was about to uncover, was that there were no property taxes due. No medical invoices outstanding. Nothing legitimate at all. Just a spiraling legal mess that my father and brother were hiding, one they expected me to quietly bankroll. I tell you this now because I want you to understand the woman narrating this story. I'm not vengeful. I'm not reckless. I'm not out for blood. I'm out for truth. And when truth is armed with evidence, calm conviction, and time, it does not need to shout. 2 days after the courthouse incident, a bank envelope arrived in my mailbox, one that neither of them intended for me to see. In my family, the emotional scales were always tipped. My father adored two things in life: efficiency and my brother. I came in somewhere after those, in a respectable but emotionally distant third place. Growing up, Daniel could do no wrong. If he broke curfew, Dad called it independence. If I questioned something, I was being difficult. Mom, ever gentle, tried to bridge the gap, but her death 10 years ago left a vacuum Daniel rushed to fill, taking control of Dad's finances, appointments, even his medications. He claimed it was easier that way. Dad agreed. I didn't question it, until it was too late. The truth is, I spent most of my adult life compensating for my father's choices. When Daniel failed to pay rent, Dad covered it. When Daniel overdrew his accounts, Dad called me. And when Dad needed someone to drive him to appointments, pick up prescriptions, or manage insurance paperwork, it was me who handled the details while Daniel basked in the praise for being there. Still, I told myself, family first. And I kept giving. Time. Energy. Money. Until they took the one thing I'd spent years building. My retirement cushion. $48,000, scraped together dollar by dollar, now allegedly absorbed by Dad's legal needs. But here's the part that truly lodged under my ribs. Neither of them thought I'd question it. They assumed the good daughter would stay quiet. The dependable one. The uncomplaining one. That bank envelope in my mailbox changed everything. Inside were 3 statements, duplicates of accounts I didn't know existed. All linked to my father. All showing large transfers. And one, the most damning of all, showed a withdrawal in almost the exact amount I had sent. But the destination wasn't a legal service. It was my brother's personal account. My hands trembled, but my mind was sharp. Years of administrative work clicking into place. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't even negligence. It was a pattern. And now, finally, it was a documented pattern. I decided to confront no one. Not yet. Instead, I booked an appointment with someone my family didn't know I still kept in contact with. My old attorney. The following week, I sat at my dining table with a stack of invoices, bank statements, and my laptop glowing a soft blue in the early morning quiet. My dog, Jasper, lay curled at my feet. He sensed the tension, occasionally lifting his head as if to check whether I was breathing evenly. I was. Calmness can be a kind of armor. I clicked through every document my brother had ever forwarded to me. Screenshots, PDFs, photos of alleged medical bills. I had filed everything neatly, because that is the sort of woman I am. A tidy archive of truth and lies, all time-stamped. One by one, the inconsistencies revealed themselves like bruises rising to the surface. The property tax notice he'd sent me? A year old, and already paid. The medical invoice? For a facility my father had never visited. The attorney consultation fee he claimed Dad urgently needed? My father had never stepped foot in that office. The attorney later confirmed it. But the worst came from the bank statements, the ones that had accidentally been mailed to me. That transfer of $48,000. It had gone to Daniel's personal checking account. And within 48 hours, the bulk of it had been withdrawn in cash. No mention of legal fees. No retainer. Not even a pretense. Just a simple, clean siphoning of my savings. For a moment, a grief-like wave washed over me. Less for the money, more for the final, unarguable truth. My family hadn't just taken advantage of my trust. They had depended on it. And once they believed I wouldn't push back, they stopped hiding the mechanics of their betrayal altogether. I leaned back, letting the weight of that settle. Then I opened a fresh document on my computer. A simple title. Timeline of events. My attorney would need it. Because I had decided, with absolute clarity, that this would not remain a private family shame. The world often gives older women 2 choices: be quiet or be dismissed. I refused both. I wrote for hours, building a meticulous chronology. The more detail I added, the more a strange sense of steadiness filled me. My father's mantra, family first, echoed once in my mind, but now it carried a new translation. Family should be the first to be held accountable. The next day, my attorney called with news that changed everything. What my family had done wasn't just unethical. It was potentially criminal. My attorney, Evelyn Hart, was 71 years old and sharper than any blade. I had known her for decades. She'd helped me through my divorce and later reviewed my retirement accounts. We shared a mutual respect built on quiet competence. When she heard the outline of what happened, she didn't gasp. She didn't coddle. She simply said, "Come in. Bring everything." So I did. The hum of her office printer filled the silence as she scanned each piece of evidence. My forwarded emails, screenshots, bank statements, copied text messages, loan transfer confirmations. After nearly an hour, she folded her hands and looked at me over her glasses. "Mary Ann, this isn't just misappropriation. This is elder financial exploitation. And depending on your father's cognitive state at the time of the transfers, it may qualify as fraud." I exhaled slowly, my heart steady but heavy. "I'm not trying to ruin anyone," I said. She nodded. "But they've already done substantial damage. You're not here to ruin them, you're here to correct the record." Her words struck something deep. Evelyn then requested permission to contact Adult Protective Services, as well as the bank's fraud department. She explained that even if I didn't want criminal charges, documentation was crucial in case my brother continued withdrawing funds or manipulating my father's accounts. The more she spoke, the more a new truth settled into my bones. If I didn't intervene, they would keep doing this. Not because they needed to, but because they believed they could. Evelyn drafted 3 letters that afternoon. A formal request for bank investigation into unauthorized transfers. A petition to re-evaluate my father's financial guardianship. A notice of pending inquiry sent to my brother. She slid the copies toward me for review. "They're going to be furious," I said. "Yes," she replied. "But fury is not evidence. Documents are." I left the office with a small folder of originals and a new kind of quiet inside me. Not fear, not anger. Resolve. A resolve that felt like standing on solid ground for the first time in years. And that resolve grew even stronger when, 2 days later, APS called me with a discovery of their own. My father wasn't just confused. His primary physician had recorded cognitive decline months earlier, meaning my brother had been moving money under the guise of helping, while knowing full well our father didn't understand what he was signing. The betrayal, it turned out, was older than I thought. My brother showed up at my doorstep the next morning, pounding on the door, demanding to fix this privately. But I had already decided nothing would be private again. His pounding echoed through the hallway, shaking the doorframe. Jasper barked once, sharp and protective. I opened the door only halfway. Daniel's face was flushed, his expression tight with what he undoubtedly believed was righteous indignation. "What the hell did you do?" he demanded before I could speak. I kept my voice calm. "I didn't do anything, Daniel. I simply filed paperwork. The kind you should have been keeping, given you were managing Dad's finances." He pushed against the door, but I remained firm. "You're overreacting," he snapped. "Dad needed help. You've always known that. And the money." "Don't lie," I interrupted. "Not to me. Not anymore." He froze for a moment, his mouth still half open. I continued. "I have the bank statements. I know exactly where the money went." His eyes flickered, just a split second of panic, but it was enough. "You don't understand," he tried again, the anger softening into a manipulative sigh I knew from childhood. "I was protecting Dad. And you. The family. Lawyers just make everything worse. Or shine light on things you'd rather keep hidden." His jaw tightened. "If you don't retract everything, Dad will be dragged through this. Is that what you want?" A familiar old guilt tried to rise, decades of conditioning, but I didn't let it surface. Dad deserves protection, I said. Actual protection. Not whatever this has been. A tense silence stretched. Then I said the words that shifted the ground beneath us. I'm petitioning for financial guardianship. He laughed. Loud, derisive, unsteady. You think the court will give you control over Dad's money? No, I said quietly. I think the court will take it from you. For the first time, true fear crossed his face. Not for Dad. For himself. I closed the door. Not slammed. Not dramatic. Just a firm, resolute closure, the sound of a boundary being rebuilt after years of erosion. Inside, I leaned against the door and breathed, long and slow. This was the turning point. The moment I let go of being the family's peacekeeper, fixer, caregiver. I was now the historian, the documenter, the witness, and the woman who would see this through to the end. 3 weeks later, the court date arrived, and Daniel walked in with a lawyer I recognized from my father's old business disputes. A man with his own questionable history. Courtrooms have a peculiar stillness. Sterile, measured, almost scientific. Truth there is not emotional. It is procedural. When the judge asked for evidence, Evelyn handed over our organized binder. Tabs. Dates. Signatures. A clear narrative of exploitation and deception. Daniel's attorney attempted bluster, claiming misunderstanding, family miscommunication, delayed invoices, emotional strain. But every point he raised was met with a corresponding document from our file. Every evasive answer was countered with a timestamp. And when the judge read the physician's notes, detailing my father's impaired cognition, the tone in the courtroom shifted. This wasn't a sibling dispute. This was a pattern of financial abuse. Daniel's shoulders sank lower with each passing minute. By the time the judge finished, the verdict landed with quiet precision. Daniel removed from all financial authority. A third-party guardian appointed for Dad's estate. A mandatory review of all withdrawals made in the previous 18 months. Potential criminal charges pending the bank's fraud investigation. Not once did the judge raise their voice. Justice doesn't need volume. Daniel never turned to look at me. Not when the decision was read. Not when he was told he'd need to provide full accounting within 10 days. Not even when his attorney muttered something sharp in his ear. His downfall wasn't explosive. It was quiet, administrative, inevitable. Afterward, in the hallway, Evelyn touched my arm. "This is the beginning," she said gently. "Not the end." She was right. Within weeks, the bank confirmed unauthorized transfers. APS substantiated the exploitation claim. And Dad, once the gravity holding us all in orbit, looked at me one afternoon with a rare moment of clarity and said, "I didn't know, Marianne. I'm sorry. It fractured something in me, but not in a painful way. More like a long cracked window finally settling into peace." Daniel avoided me completely. He moved out of state soon after, perhaps hoping distance would soften consequence. But consequences, especially those documented with dates and signatures, travel well. His silence was not victory. My calm was. Months later, when Dad passed away, the final piece of truth emerged. His revised will, handwritten before his cognitive decline, with one last unexpected message. My father passed in early spring, on a morning filled with soft rain and the smell of wet soil. Jasper lay beside his bed until the final breath. The house felt still afterward, not empty, just settled. A week later, the court-appointed guardian contacted me with something unusual. A handwritten letter my father had left in his private safe, dated almost a year earlier, before his mental decline. Inside was a revised will. But more importantly, a note addressed specifically to me. My father's handwriting had always been neat, rigid, confident. Here it wavered slightly, but the words were unmistakably his. "Marianne, if you are reading this, it means you have been the one who stayed steady. You always did. I know your brother leans too heavily on others. I hope he grows out of it, but I fear he won't. I want you to have the house, not because you need it but because you earned it. Use it for peace. Thank you for being better to me than I deserved. I folded the letter slowly, breathing in the strange mixture of relief, grief, and validation. Dad saw more than he ever let on. He had known, in some part of himself, that the scales had never been even. In the weeks that followed, life took on a different rhythm. I tended the garden, sorted through his belongings, let the legal dust settle around Daniel without participating in the fallout. The bank required repayment of unauthorized withdrawals. The guardian ensured Dad's estate was protected. Daniel sent one brief message, "I hope you're happy," to which I did not reply. Happiness wasn't the point. Peace was. And for the first time in my life, my peace didn't depend on keeping someone else comfortable. One evening, I sat on Dad's old porch swing, the air warm and still. Fireflies pulsed in the yard. Jasper rested his head on my knee. I realized then, revenge had never been my goal. Accountability had. And accountability, once set into motion, does the work quietly, carving a path for healing to grow in its wake. On the anniversary of the court ruling, I received one final letter, this time from Daniel himself. And what he wrote surprised me more than anything he'd done before. The letter arrived in a plain white envelope, no return address. The handwriting was unmistakably Daniel's, hasty, uneven, impatient even on paper. Inside, a single page. "Marianne, I'm in counseling now. Court stuff forced me into it. They said I needed to address patterns. I guess I do. I blamed you at first. I don't anymore. I know why you did what you did. I know I took advantage. I don't expect forgiveness. Just acknowledgement that I'm trying." I read it twice. Then a third time. And for the first time since this began, I felt something soften. Not absolution. Not reconciliation. But space. Space to let go of the version of my family I had carried for too long. Space to see my brother not as a villain, but as a man shaped by choices he never questioned, and consequences he finally had to face. I didn't write back. Not out of spite. Out of wisdom. Some chapters must close without rewriting. So here is what I want you, the listener, to take from my story. Family loyalty is a gift, not a contract. Love is not measured by how much you tolerate. And boundaries are not betrayals. They are forms of self-respect. When someone uses your kindness as currency, document the truth. Stand your ground. Speak calmly. Move intentionally. Revenge doesn't always look like triumph or spectacle. Sometimes it looks like a quiet room, a stack of organized papers, and the knowledge that you finally chose yourself. I am 64 years old. My life is simpler now, steadier, warmer. And if I could offer one sentence of wisdom to anyone standing where I once stood, it would be this. Protect your peace with the same devotion you once used to protect the people who took it from you. Because peace, once claimed, is the sweetest form of justice there is.